Alright kids, welcome to this video. This is going to be our video number 2 on coding with Python, and on this video we're not going to do anything that's really basic, but I just want to show you like how can a Python program be used to do something really relatively quick. And that's the idea of scripting. Python is a scripting language. You write a very simple script to help you automate some things or make your life easier. Okay, so in this example, I have a text file called data.txt, and we're going to create a new file with student's email, and we're going to follow this format of having their student number in front of the @ symbol, and we're going to attach this pattern of gaps.yrdsp.ca. Now, I'm not using your data. I've actually just generated a 6-number student number randomly, and I have also generated these very random people. Um, Now, if they somehow magically exist in our school, that'll be crazy because I just literally used a random name generator. But yeah, so we have 100 students here. I've given them all a 6-digit student ID, and we have given them their first and last name. Now, in this document, I personally don't care about their first and last name. We're going to learn how to just try to grab that information, and then we're going to try to attach the at gaps.yrdsp.ca email address onto it, and then generate a new text file called email.txt so that I can use those when I send out like an email for sample. Okay. So first and foremost, we're going to do the following. Step 1. Read the data.txt file and grab the information. All right, in Python, there is a special format that you do want to write when you want to grab a file. So that nomenclature is using this keyword called with, and we're going to be pairing that with this function called open. Open is a function that allows us to open a file so that we can have access to it. So we're going to give it the name. Just for clarity's sake, I'm going to say in my current directory, look at a file called data.txt. Now, you really usually don't need to have this because your Python file should be in the same directory, but I'm just doing this out of habit. We're saying in my current directory, look for a file called data.txt. Now, if this was in, let's say, like a data folder, I could specify that this is in this data directory and navigate to this data.txt, but it is not. It is right inside my same directory that I have my video o2.py program in, and it's right there. So, in this one, I'm going to be doing something called a read. So I'm going to give it the second argument of R. I'm telling this open function that you're going to be opening this data.txt file, and you're going to be just reading from it. We're not going to be modifying this or appending any data into this text file, but rather just getting information out of it. And I need to call this. I need to call the result of what the function returns. So we're going to call that as the data file. And we're now saying we're going to be within this scope. Within the scope of us opening this data.txt file, we're going to read it. And as I read it, I want to run some code on that file. So we are using with to start this scope. With helps us start a scope where we can do some code or execute some code. On something. And this is just a normal practice that Python programmers use when reading and writing different files. Here we go. So let's see what we get. So we can say we have names. And we're going to say, well, from our data file that we just opened, I want to read the lines that it has. Okay. And just to see what the result would be, we can say print that variable. I've created a variable called names and I set it equal to this file that I open, and I'm running this method called .readlines, as in, hey, like I have a data file that I have got by running this open function. Let me see what .readlines does. So I'm going to save this file, and I'm going to go on my terminal and say, hey, Python, execute Python program called video02 or vid02. So here we go. And here we go. I have got a list. Readlines generates a list. So I'll say readlines method generates a list. And inside our list is like an array list, and we have all these items separated. So I'm just going to analyze the very last one here. So we can see that we have a textual data or a string as each individual items in our list. And within it, we have their name, we have this comma, we have the /n to denote that we were creating a new line right after the student IDs were set. So cool. I'm gonna need to remove that /n and just really grab all these numeric data, the ID data from each of these string, and that's what we're gonna do next. Okay. So I'm just gonna comment this out. All right, so I have this variable called names, and it has their names and their student number, and I'm going to try to get that student number. Okay, so I'm going to say an example name is equal to the value from our list. So I'm going to say names, access the very first one. This is called indexing, where we can grab a value from a list or a string by using square brackets. So what this does is I know that names is a list, and from names I want to grab the very first item in that value in that list. So I can say that from this database, which is a list, I'm going to access the 0th item, which is the very first item. So I can actually print this for you. Now, if I do example name, clear this code and run this code after I save my code, Python vid02.py, I just get Blanche Abed with the student ID of 401164. Perfect. Now, if you notice there's this little black box here, it's because there is a /n, as in it creates a new line all the time, and print, of course, always generates a new line as well. Okay, so now this is gross. I don't need Blanche Abed. I don't need the comma. I don't need the new line at the end. I just need this number. Okay, so Python has something very handy. We can do some cleaning. So I'm going to say our clean data. Actually, let's do clean name. It's going to be equal to example underscore name dot split. And I'm going to tell it to split by this pattern called comma. And instead of me explaining what that does, let's see what that does. So I have variable clean name. And I'm going to print that out right here. Save my code. Execute. If you notice on my first print statement, it gives us what we had before with the new line here. And Blanche Abed in front and the 41164 in the back like so. But they're all, it's just an entire string. Right? It's a textual data. It's a string. It's trapped in quotation marks right now. But I ran split and it looked for the split method. It looked for the comma and actually split it into a list of 2 items. So now it became I have their name and I have this almost a numeric value that we wanted, 4011164 and then /n. Beautiful. Okay. So taking this concept of saying, well, from a list, or string to be honest, but from a list, if I use square brackets and provide a number, I can grab that. I can grab a value at that index or at that location. So since this generates a list, I'm going to do the following. All right, most Python programmers just right there, but we're going to say clean name. I'm going to update yourself. Well, clean name itself prior was a list. And then I'm going to use the square brackets and say -1. And little no, we can use -, indexing starting at -1 to go backwards. Okay. So this is actually just going to grab the very last item of the list. Instead of the 0 grabbing the first, and if I start going into negatives, it's going to grab the last item in our list. So here, I'm going to print clean name now after saving. In our previous examples of outputting these two lines, I was getting Blanche Abbott with the 411164 all as a single string with a new line in the back. That's why we got this empty space, right? But we ran the split with the and we told the split to split it into a list by looking for the pattern of a comma. So Blanche Abbott ended up becoming the very first item of the list, and 411164 and the new line, which is right here, was stored as the second item. When I ran this for the second time, we still got this example name that we are dealing with, but now I just have 411164 and this pesky little new line that I want to get rid of, but I was able to now get rid of Blanche Abbott. We're getting close. So in this scenario, for us to grab that value, since this returned a list, okay, split returns a list by separating by the given pattern. And our given pattern here was the comma, right? So we were given a list and we grab the last item. Now the last item is a string. With the string, I can actually get rid of stuff within a string by doing something called a replace method. So on my clean name, I'm going to say clean name, you're going to be updated to what you were prior, but I'm going to say replace that /end with an empty string, as in I don't want anything there. But even better, I'm going to go at gaps.wiredsb.ca, and for sanity's sake, I'm going to be adding a semicolon. So my program saved. Let's now print our clean name. In our first execution now, I have Blanche Abbott, which is outputting this example name variable, and it's not something we wanted. We've done 3 cleaning. We've done 3 variable updates to this variable called clean name. The first line right here, we created it into a list by splitting the string into multiple parts. The first part and the second part because we were splitting by the comma. So we were splitting Blanche Abbott into the first item of our list, and next item of our list is the student number and the new line. That's why there's a line right here, right? But when we grab that last value, we were able to grab the 41164 and the / new line. We're like, no, I want to get rid of that, right? We grabbed it here and we updated clean name to be the last item of that list. And then we said, hey, since we have that student number now, we're going to replace the new line with a pattern that I wanted to use, which was the @gaps.wiredsb.ca. Now we have this beautiful 6-digit student ID number with the email addresses that I wanted to set up. Perfect. Now this is just a single person's email address for Blanche Abbott, who was the very first person in our data set. I need to do this for all people. So now we're just going to simply just tweak this so that we can now add @gaps.wiredsb.ca to every student in that data.txt. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go up here. This is a list that has all the Blanche Abbotts with their student IDs all connected. So I'm going to run a for loop I'm going to say line in names. This is a for each loop. And basically, since names is a data set, it's a list that has number of items. So we're going to run a loop that says for this line in the data set, for this line in the data set. Basically, this is a temporary variable that's going to represent each individual items in a list in order. All right, so if I were to say print line, and we'll just keep this here. I'm going to save that code, clear Python Vito to Py. Run that code, and if you see, I ran that code and is outputting everyone line by line. The very first line is Blanche Abbott with the new line escape character at the back, and we're just printing out everyone right here. That's what the for line does, because this name variable holds everyone's data right here from this data.txt. Awesome. Okay. Now we're going to say, now I'm going to move this. I'm going to move this code into my for loop. And I don't need to print each line anymore because I don't need to show you what's happening here. I'm going to say example name is equal to line. And then with everything we've done here, we're just going to copy that over. So instead of just analyzing the very first name in our list, we're actually going to reuse all the code that we have practiced here and just apply it to our for loop, but just making sure that our variable called example underscore name is now updated to line instead of just repeatedly saying we're going to edit the very first item in our variable called names. So we're going to run that. Okay, now, okay, we have this code and we got rid of these lines of code. So I'm just, okay, I delete all that, delete all that. And then I can show you what print clean. Now, we are doing all these edits. We're not really saving them right now. So I'm going to say a clean data set, or clean data is that. This is a empty list. All right, so right now I've created a variable called clean data and I set it to an empty list. And I'm going to say, well, clean data, I want you to append this newly clean name to your list. And at this point now, the for loop is finished. Therefore, I can print clean data. And in my terminal, I'm going to clear my screen and run python video2.py. And here we go. We have all the student numbers all set with their proper gaps.wiredsp.ca and a semicolon at the end to top it all off, because when I do send emails to a bunch of people, you need to separate email addresses by a semicolon. All right, this is all handy dandy, but this is really hard to copy. It has the pesky commas and it has a square bracket. What I want to do is not run this every time I need this. Well, I just want to save that to a file. So we're going to say the width at here data file is closed, and I'm going to run a new instance of the width operation. I'm going to say width open, and I'm going to say this is going to be in my current directory. I'm going to generate a new folder called emails, and I'm going to say class1.txt, and we're not reading from this file, so we're going to be writing to it. And I'm going to say as email file. So I'm opening a new file called email class1.txt, but within the context of Python, I'm going to call it email underscore file. Okay, and now in my program so far, I now have a list called clean data, which stores all this value. So I'm going to now run a for each loop again. I'm going to say for email in clean data. I'm going to tell email file to write. I'm going to write that email variable into my email file. And just to make this clean and to have some things, every time I write it, I'm going to write it onto my console. I'm going to say email has been written to our file. And when this is all done, I'm going to say for loop is finished here. I'm going to unindent out and say print operation finished. And put a little period. And let's see what happens. Boom. We're going to go clear. And I'm going to run Python video2 again. At this point, I have an error. Emails. Oh, it doesn't create new directories for me. That's unfortunate. We're gonna go boop, do that, and rerun. Okay, so when we first run our code, we have a list that's being printed right here. I have all the emails converted from my original data.txt. And when in line 27, you could see that we're writing all these emails. At every loop, I'm printing out email has been written to our file, and we have written many, many emails to our file. Now, let's see what our file looks like. So I'm going to go to my Explorer in my directory, which Python didn't let me create a new directory, so I just wrote it in the same directory. I have a class1.txt. In my class1.txt, I have this beautifully ugly data set. If I were to go to the end, I have 408.853 at gaps.worduse.ca, and that was the final student's email address. Now, I have in this text file. So let's say, for example, I highlight all of them and copy it into an emailing service, and I say, hey, you have a pop quiz tomorrow, make sure to study. I can send email as I want to. Yeah. But see, we only wrote from what, line 9 to 32. So we wrote about 23 lines of code to read a text file and do some string-based manipulation so that we can create email addresses like so. And this is really the simplicity of Python that makes Python very popular currently. And you get to write scripts like this, and you can do this for all files that had the same format as the data.txt. Okay. Now, obviously, we're not going to jump into Python where I'm expecting you to know how to do indexing, negative indexing, knowing how to use split, do string manipulation, and work with list, and know how to do a for loop. So this was very advanced topic for where we are at the moment, but I just wanted to show you that like maybe within a month from now that this kind of code was going to be very simple for you. Okay. Anywho, that is it for me. And I hope you enjoyed this video. And as always, stay classy.